or you see it on some screen where it's just what they like to call splash for the drone pilots. Uh, yeah, gonna be a lot of dust that way. But race wars. What are we gonna do about race? Would it make sense if we imported a bunch more blacks to make it more? What, whites are like 47%? I don't know. They keep giving these new numbers because you got a lot of mixed races now. Would it make sense to bring in enough blacks to make them perfectly numerically equal to whites? That should not be required, because what you're suggesting there is that if that balance is ever offset, then there can be no justice and equality across this country. Justice and equality has to come from the law and be employed equally and universally across all groups. It shouldn't matter which cop I get on a given day, depending on my color. Shouldn't matter which judge, which doctor, which lawyer. None of that should matter. It should be a universal application. But it isn't. No, nope. You get a different cop on a different day, you get a different result. It's a fucking shame. That's a joke if you think about it. That's like buying a lottery ticket. Ooh, what am I going to get today? It just pisses me off. And then these politicians saying, well, everything's fair and just. You can get yourself a lawyer and do this and that. Well, it depends on your judge. We've got one judge saying, look, I think you can be reformed. I want you to go home and be on house arrest for a month. We got another judge saying, I'm putting you in prison for this white guy going into the church. I'm going to read what Colin had to say in a minute, but this white guy going into a church and shooting up blacks, not quite the same as the white police. Because when it comes to the police, that's an authority. That's an authority, and we have to put our trust into them. And if we can't trust an authority, then we have a major problem. Now, you're going to have crazy white civilians, just like you're going to have crazy black civilians shooting stuff up. Race motivated, sure. Tens of thousands of things across America every day happen that are race motivated. Some very subtle, some more overt, but they're happening. Going into a church and shooting up some black people, that's pretty fucking overt. That's making a statement. And to some white supremacist groups, that guy will be a hero. But you have to remember that, I don't know the numbers, but I'm just going to be crazy here and say 98.5% of whites in America are not a fan of what that man did. I'm getting crazy with the numbers. Because they know that the people in that church were just worshiping an innocent. It's that 1.5% that hate all people black from any country for any reason. They think they all need to be killed. That should scare you. Whatever that percentage is, maybe you guys can help me work it out. Who really feels good? Who's watching the news reports and secretly in their own living room going, thank God they killed some more blacks. That's 9 less blacks to deal with. Now, if we could just start shooting up some Mexicans too, get it back to all white, everything would be great. Who's thinking that? That's terrifying to me. Because if the most powerful country in the world, if in fact we still are, can't set a precedent for equal justice for all, then no one can. And you're looking at a world that will be chaos forever until it self-destructs. And that's sad. Somebody's got to set a standard somewhere, folks. And we're not doing it right now. The United States is not getting it done. Colin says it's not really a black-white thing in Germany. It's more a German everyone, not German thing. Okay, Germany versus the rest. In Nuremberg, the Turkish were hated by most. In Zendorf, port of entry, the locals would shun the immigrants waiting to be processed to come to the country. Okay, so it didn't matter their color, but the fact that they were not a born here, but a come here, excluded them. And he says that is not the view of everyone there, but it's still there, below the normal view. So they kind of run this whole thing, Macon, Georgia. They kind of run this whole thing under the radar, keeping it low key. I'm telling you, some racism is natural, but what I'm saying with that is there's a preference for your own color. You know, you'll find that in groups, but that doesn't mean you have to hate other colors. That has to be learned. And until the education starts in the home of grandparents and parents telling their kids, look, treat every person based on their deeds and on no other thing, and their spirit of goodness, and what they're willing to do to help, and what they're not willing to do to hurt, their behavior, their deeds. I mean, that's really the only fair thing to judge somebody on, if you have to judge at all. You know, hearing a Christian judge anybody bothers me, because you're not supposed to. You're not supposed to judge anybody at all, for any reason. But if you're not a Christian, or you're of a religion that allows judgment, you should still only be judging on deeds. I think it's a shame. It's a sad shame what happened in America today, but this is just one of many. We see it over and over. So was it that bad? Compare this to the Colorado shooter, the one in Aurora. I was stationed in Aurora. I mean, that place was so peaceful. You could go out, wasn't any problems. I never saw any crime. I used to ride the bus down to the mall from Lowry Air Force Base. Never had any problems. And then somebody snaps. You don't know where it's going to happen. Columbine was a peaceful place too. And these, Virginia Tech, 32 people shot in the head by one guy, and they're all trying to play dead or whatever because they don't want to get shot, but he knows better, and he stays in there, and he's killing. The value of life is going to vary between individuals, and the psychoses or neuroses that build them up into a killing machine that no longer values life or values fame over life, and you definitely make a name for yourself when you go on a shooting spree. Let's not underestimate the value of getting your name in lights, okay? I think when you look at somebody like, I don't know, maybe David Berkowitz, I think you see some of that. Who is it out there? Here's a question for you. Of all the mass shooters, I want you to think of all the mass shooters in American history and world history, even the guy in Norway. Think about him for a sec. Now think about the interviews they've had after these people were in prison before they were put to death. Think of these interviews. Of all those people in which you saw interviews, how many of them made sense to you, seemed to be thinking rationally? In my view, very few. The brain was already broken. And now we have a very uncomfortable situation facing us. This guy was giving off signs left and right that there were problems. We're not allowed to go arrest somebody because they're acting like a threat. So, and we wouldn't want that. That's that's very invasive. It's very unconstitutional. But how can we otherwise protect ourselves when somebody's gearing up to go on a fucking mass murder spree? What are you going to do? Colin says we have a pecking order here in El Paso, a hierarchy of class. Those will better affluence, jobs, lifestyle, look down on those who have less worth. They will actually talk down to them, treat them rudely, and then allow it to happen. I asked why this happens, and they tell me it has always been this way. It has always been this way is the worst reason to do anything ever. The next time you're in a business meeting and somebody says, well, this is the way we've always done it, say, so the fuck what? Why is that better than this way I'm proposing? The fact that you've always done it this way doesn't mean anything. The question is it better than this new way we're proposing? Now, you can't say that in a business meeting and get fired. I know. I've been fired. That's the kind of thing that happens, especially when you tell the truth too much. They want politics. They want you playing these games, and I'm not really real good with that. But this whole class warfare thing, this won't end, Colin, I'm afraid, in America, worldwide. The people that have the money, the people that have a little money and are trying to climb up, and then the people that have no money and they're either medically destroyed or they're educationally not able to climb out of the hole. They're just getting those low-end jobs, and maybe they're not good at managing their money, and maybe they're feeding a drug or alcohol addiction, and there's something holding them down. It could be literally a learning disability that's keeping them from going any further up the social ladder. Doesn't matter where we are as humans, there will always be strata. There will always be levels at which people are. And I don't know if there's any fundamental way without modifying DNA that we're going to be able to get those at the top to treat those in the middle and the bottom with respect. But it is those people that I respect more than any. Because the person at the top who treats those in the middle and the bottom with respect, that's a real human. That's a good human. That's a human. There's an old saying that says something like, how somebody treats a person that can do him no good, meaning not help him, reveals his character. And I think it does. And keep an eye out for that. If you see a CEO and he goes to a restaurant and he's got the waitress there and he gives her a compliment, leaves her a great tip, he doesn't have to do that. And a lot of wealthy people are penny pinchers. So you got to watch the way they treat. And there's also these people that want to give the illusion that they're charitable. So they make it very public. Yeah, I give to the Red Cross every year. And they make that very public. The people that you really, that I really respect are the ones that sort of keep it quiet and just go out and do it, you know. And this is something I was talking to Colin about. One of the things I'm going to do with the rest of my life, I'm making a major change here. This is just the time to do it. It's one of the turning points. I'm going to be helping people. I'm not going to tell you guys about it. I'm not telling anybody. I'm just going to go do it because I think it's the right thing to do. And I think the reason for it, I got to give Tony Robbins a little credit here. His mom and dad were fighting on Thanksgiving. His whole family was there. They didn't have any food for Thanksgiving. It was very embarrassing and saddening to him. Somebody delivered food to their door. Some stranger cared enough about a family of 5 or 6 there to deliver a Thanksgiving meal to their door. And their dad, because he was too prideful, rejected it and said, "We don't do charity here." And then soon after that, the father left the house. Well, I went through a similar situation at one point in my life when I was in college. I was in really bad shape, and somebody gave me a couple of bags of groceries. And I will never forget that. And when you realize that strangers care about you, then you have to care about strangers unless you're a psychopath. You have to. So I'm going to be putting definitely a significant amount of effort, limping if I have to, crawling if I have to, into helping people that cannot help themselves or that are having a hard time helping themselves. And some of it I might do through the radio show. I don't know, start taking calls once I get broadband of people that are having real emotional problems, since I have some training in psychology. Maybe I can help that way, but I was thinking of helping at veterans hospitals and just doing some stuff there. But you won't hear about that stuff I do because, I don't know, I think it's karma. I think if you want good karma, you can't tell people about your good deeds. You just have to go do them. You know, just go do them. Yeah, it's one of those things. Colin says, what I don't understand, the hatred for our president. He may not be the best, but he is the first black president. Would those that hate still feel the same way if, let's say, Colin Powell was our first president? That's a good question. I think you're going to get a huge split. I mean, an onion bloom of responses on that, though, Colin. I don't think it's one or two views on it. And he says, and another factor, history is written by the victors of war. True. Sometimes history can be hidden, though. Like, for example, I was thinking of the Scottish and the English. The English were whooping their ass for a couple hundred years there, but the Scottish were keeping records and hiding them, like the Scotichronicon. And if they can hide the records for long enough for the war to pass like a bad storm, then some of those records can reemerge and they can affect history. But you're right, most of the time what happens, the whole town, the whole city, the whole country is burned down, and what's brought in is the written records of those that have won. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm just mumbling at this point. Let me see if I can find you guys a show. I don't know what Apocales is doing. He normally finds us a show to go to. I'm pulling up Spreaker Live now. My voice will be gone soon. I was in a better mood today than I have been in a couple weeks, and I feel incredibly thankful for that, because when you feel like you're an anchor on a boat that's being towed down a road and you're the anchor and you've fallen out and you're dragging along the concrete, that's how I felt. And this is the worst physical day I've had in a long time. But physical and emotional don't always match up. So emotionally, I have hit kind of a good spot. Okay, there's Debbie Daly's on. Looks like Spreaker Drama. I don't see anybody else that I recognize on. but we can look